Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Ken Davenport. I am the producer of A Beautiful Noise, the Neil Diamond musical. Did you have a good time? Great. Awesome. I'm so thankful to you for coming. You know, I'll tell you the story of how all this happened, but what I will also tell you is that one of the reasons I'm so happy you all came and from all these faraway places is that I was very, very fortunate to be given the gift to produce this show, and that's what I consider it. You know, Neil Diamond is a very unique artist and a very unique human being. And as far as celebrity goes and someone who's achieved his level of success, take a look at the body of his work post his work. There's no movie, there's no biopic, right? There's no documentary, there's no biography. There's none of the usual stuff that come along with someone of his magnitude. And that's because this is how he wanted his story told. He wanted it told in a Broadway musical. So to be given the gift of being able to put together a show based on his life is a little filled with pressure. But it was a wonderful experience and something that I consider myself very lucky to be able to do. I've been given the gift of this man's legacy, which is why I'm so thankful to all of you for coming today. So let me just tell you a little bit of how it started, the origin story of A Beautiful Noise. And because a lot of people ask me, like, how'd you get the rights to this catalog? You must have been chasing it for years. And the fact is, something like this only happens when the artist himself wants it to happen. So, and this story goes that Neil is actually a massive Jersey Boys fan. How many people seen Jersey Boys? Oh. Great. So how many people know the name Bob Gaudio? Yeah. So Bob Gaudio is one of the characters in Jersey Boys. He is one of the original 4 seasons. And Bob wrote all the music. Can't Take My Eyes Off of You and Sherry and all that stuff. So Bob's my producing partner on the show. And the reason is that Bob and Neil are friends. And one day Neil was watching a production of Jersey Boys. The story goes that he saw it twice in one day. He loved it so much. And during the middle of it, he elbowed Bob and said, "Bob." And Neil was like, "Yeah, what? Can I get one of these?" And Bob, of course, was like, "Are you kidding? With your catalog, with your life, with all the people you've touched all over the world? Of course." So I was very fortunate. I knew someone that knew me and knew Bob, and we made this match, and we started on the road of creating this musical. This was 2018. Now, the first 2 people involved with the creation of a musical of this type, the writer and the director. Okay. The director was someone I had worked with before named Michael Mayer. He's done a bunch of things. The original company of Thoroughly Modern Millie, which I was on. Everything from A View from the Bridge, Spring Awakening, a lot of things. And then it came time to find the writer. And I called a bunch of the agents in town and said, "Listen, I'm looking for a writer for this magnificent life and property. I'm looking for someone to write the story of Neil Diamond." And to be honest, I got a lot of, "I don't think so." And I was shocked. And they're like, "Oh, my clients don't want to do a jukebox musical." So this is where I start to get very upset because I do not like the term jukebox musical at all. I call this a bio-musical. When was the last time you were in a pub or a bar and there was a jukebox and it all had one artist? Jukebox is a compilation of things, right? And they can be great and fun, but this was not that, much more important than that. But I couldn't find anybody until about a week later, one of those agents called me back and said, "Ken, I think I have someone for you." And he sounded a bit surprised. And I said, "Well, who is it?" He said, "Well, last night I escorted the writer of Bohemian Rhapsody to the New York premiere." And I was like, "The movie that's selling $1 bajillion worth of tickets?" He said, "Yeah." And we got to talking and somehow Neil Diamond came up and he said, "Neil Diamond, when I was growing up in New Zealand, there were 2 photos on my mantle. One was the Pope and one was Neil Diamond." And the agent got very excited and said they're looking for a writer for the Neil Diamond story on Broadway. And Anthony McCartan is his name, said, "I have to do this. I must do this because Neil was such an influence on my life and my mom's life." And we hear this a lot, right? We hear that a lot of people got the gift of Neil Diamond from their parents. And then we hear a lot of parents still passing it on. They got it from their parents, now they're passing it on to their children, young folks in the audience today over there. So that's how it started. Now, I thought this would take forever to happen with a screenwriter like Anthony McCartan involved. He had a draft to us in about a month. And how that draft was created and this whole idea, this concept, was that we were sitting in the Michelangelo Hotel just a few blocks away from here. Me, Neil Diamond, Bob Gaudio, I mean, talk about complex right there, and Anthony McCartan. And we were just batting a bunch of ideas around, and Anthony, I could see, go into his like investigative dramatist mode. Because if you don't know Anthony, he's a 4-time Academy Award nominee. Theory of Everything, right? Stephen Hawking's story, Darkest Hour, Winston Churchill, Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen, Neil Diamond, the 2 popes. He specializes in biographical dramas. Like, look at that body of work. So this was right up his alley. And if you've seen any of those, 2 popes especially, you can see the style, right? An intimate situation. I'm gonna put 2 people and I'm gonna have them talk. So we were talking about a whole bunch of ways to present the story, and Neil started talking, and Neil started saying, you know, I was doing a memoir at one point in my life, and I was gonna structure it in these chapters of my life when I visited a therapist and went into therapy. And Anthony was like, wait. Can I use that? And I saw Neil think for a moment and said, yeah, go for it. So he did, and then wrote the script, and of course Neil had to approve it. And in fact, at one point, he called me and said, his wife called me and said, Neil would like Anthony to come to the house and read the script to him. And he did. So Anthony McCartan, he was in Beverly Hills actually at the time, and went up there to read it so Neil could really hear it rather than just read it on the page. He gave it his thumbs up approval, was involved in the process. A lot of people ask about this. He had notes, he had thoughts, a couple of the biggest ones that I remember. One, you know the point in the show where the Neil now, as we call him, we don't call him old Neil, we call him Neil now, steps forward and starts to talk about his wife, Katie. There's this beautiful passage. That's because of Neil. We were at the Palm restaurant and we were talking about the show, and he said, there's something missing. And Anthony said, what? Just tell us what it is. And he said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Katie. And I want Katie in the play somehow. And again, Anthony went to this sort of investigative mode. I could hear him sort of asking questions. They talked for hours and hours later, and he mined all that, what Neil said, and put it into that passage. So that's Neil's tribute to his current wife, Katie. The other one is my favorite, which he said, there are too many obscenities in the show. There was a previous version that had a lot of F-bombs. And I said, okay, we could take those out, but can you just tell me why? And he said, my music has always been passed down from generation to generation. And I want to make sure the next generation can come. I want those grandparents who are at the Greek with me, who followed me all these years, to be able to take their grandchildren and to say, this is the music that I grew up on. So we did. There's only one left. It's Neil effing Diamond, right? So like, that's the one that he was like, that one you can keep. So that's the story. We opened in Boston. We chose Boston, of course, because they were really the first to go on the record for performing Sweet Caroline at a sporting event with Fenway Park. I don't think they know he's from Brooklyn. Please don't, please don't tell them. I'm from Massachusetts, so we went to Fenway Park, went to Boston, and then came here. And if you haven't done this, the finale of our journey to Broadway was, of course, our opening night. And if you haven't Googled or gone onto YouTube and put in Neil Diamond, Beautiful Noise, opening night, please do so. You will see one of the most moving experiences I've ever witnessed in my life. At the end of the show, of course, we do Sweet Caroline in the curtain call, and we said to Neil, we said, look, this is your show. This is your life. We'd love to have you join us and lead us in Sweet Caroline. And we had no idea whether he would. We just made sure we put a mic up there in that box right there. And if you go onto YouTube and watch, you'll see this man who has been diagnosed with Parkinson's and has retired from touring and said he won't sing anymore, flip a switch and become the Neil Diamond that we all fell in love with and we made a Broadway musical about. What questions can I answer for you? Yeah, it was a very hotly debated topic because people were like, just call it Sweet Caroline. The show is not about Sweet Caroline. Sweet Caroline to me sounds like a tribute band. This is not a tribute band, this is the theater. We wanted to be a little bit more surrealistic about it. And as we developed the show, it became about the things in his head, all the clouds he talks about and all the things he thought. And what better way to think about that than a beautiful noise? Because everything he was thinking, all those lyrics, all that music, all that stuff, so beautiful. You know, when you probably first heard those tunes, you were like, God, listen to Sweet Caroline, it's so great. Well, for him, there was a lot of noise going on at the same time. And then the ensemble was created in a way that represented the noise in his head. all the different voices, right? Beautifully symbolized by that incredible ensemble. And you see them come out of his book, right? Because they're the thoughts. So that's where we came up with it. The top of Act 2 you're talking about, Brother Love? Yeah. So Brother Love, if you know that song, is a preacher, so it's a revival song, right? Like, it's really more about that. So don't go too deep at that point. Very cool, though. You can go on Reddit and talk a lot about that if you want, like just have a big thread, yeah. Yeah, well, this is one of my favorite houses on Broadway. And for us producers, this is one of the most coveted houses on Broadway. And a lot of people just like asked me, how did you get the rights to Neil Diamond? When we booked the Broadhurst, a lot of people said, Ken, how did you get the Broadhurst? And I said, I didn't get the Broadhurst. Neil Diamond got the Broadhurst. And I will tell you, just so you understand how this works, it's one of the great traditions of being a Broadway producer is the Schuberts, one of the families, it's a bit like the mafia. There's the 5 families that sort of control Broadway. The Schuberts are one of the families that own a bunch of theaters, Nederlanders own theaters, et cetera. One of the greatest traditions is when you want a Broadway house, you have to go ask. It's like asking for the blessing, right? So, and you'll walk out of it. When you go out of here, if you look to the left, you'll see the Schubert Theater where Hell's Kitchen is coming. Way at the top are the executive offices. These are the places where the Schuberts themselves sat. This is the place where Cameron Mackintosh went and asked for a theater for Les Mis, where David Merrick went and asked for all of it. So I literally had to go up there and ask for a theater. When I did, I said to them, I made my pitch, and I said, oh, by the way, there's someone who wants to chat with you. Oh, who is it? Is it Bob? I said, no, it's Neil. And the Schuberts have been unbelievable partners. What you may not know is that Neil Diamond played Broadway in 1972. He played the Winter Garden Theater. He played a Broadway house. I also urge you to Google the New York Times review of this concert, because he was the first rock and roll singer, they called him, to play Broadway. Before that, it had been Judy Garland and that type of music and performer. Neil was the first. And at the end of the review, it says Neil has paved the way for other artists to do something similar. Flash forward 50 years, Bruce Springsteen had a show on Broadway just a couple years ago. Just back to the story, when the executives at the Schubert, Mr. Bob Wankel, who I'm very proud to call a friend and supporter of ours, said, if the people who were here that gave you the theater back for the Winter Garden, they would say, we must give Neil Diamond a theater right now. And they did. They honored that tradition and that loyalty. Please do tell all your friends. And that may sound like producer speak or marketing speak. Yes, word of mouth is the #1 thing that sells tickets, but that's not what it's about for me. This is about spreading this man's music and his legacy as far and as wide as possible, because he gave me that gift, and I feel that little bit of pressure. But I'm so thankful. Yeah, it took 5 years. 5 years. So honestly, the average is about 5 to 8. Remember, we didn't have to write music, right? So the music came along. So Lin-Manuel Miranda will tell you, I think it took 8 years from him cracking open the biography. It took me like 4 years to read it, but to cracking that biography to becoming Hamilton's opening night. But what a producer does is I'm like a CEO of a startup. So I find an idea, I put a team together, I raise all that money, I come up with the marketing campaign. It's very much, any other business owners out here, it's very much like a startup business, and it can take a while. Why a Thursday matinee? We are the only Broadway show with a Thursday matinee. What do you think? Good. Great idea. This is something that we instituted because of you. So I'm a big believer in research and focus groups and data, and I listen a lot. And we were looking at the numbers, and it just seemed that after the pandemic, a lot of people wanted to go see more matinees. There was a great article in the New York Times about the new 8 o'clock dinner reservation was 6 o'clock. So that impacts, so I took a big risk, a big gamble. You all came and showed up. Now we are the only show, 50% of our performances are matinees. Last question, yes, sir. Okay, so last story, and I'm going to tell it really quickly. So I'm producing another musical called The Griswolds Broadway Vacation. So it is the next chapter in the story. They go to Wally World, Europe, Vegas. Now the Griswolds are coming to Broadway to see a musical. So I'm doing a reading of that. Our lead falls out at the last second. I can't do it. I'm ill. I call a buddy of mine named Will Swenson, and I say, Will, can you step in? I don't even know if this is the right role for you, but you knock everything out of the park. Will you just do this reading for us? Oh, sure. He comes in. He's fantastic. On the last day, my assistant comes up to me and says, you know, I hear that Will does like a Neil Diamond. And he does a cabaret show, and he does it with his wife, Audra McDonald, and sometimes they do, you don't bring me flowers. And I was like, wow. Literally, we're walking out the door, and I said, Will, do you do Neil Diamond? He said, oh my God, I grew up on Neil Diamond. I love Neil Diamond. I said, I'm developing the Neil Diamond story for Broadway. He said, I've been waiting for this my whole life. We cast him. Nick, who is an American Idol winner, came in actually as his standby. This is only Nick's second Broadway show. Second musical, maybe. And we discovered him, and we were like, oh my gosh, like, you close your eyes and it's Neil, right? Yeah. It's amazing. And he's an American Idol winner, and he's an unbelievable guy. He was our standby for the first year, and then he took it over. We have to go. I'll answer your question just on the way out, sir. I just have to make sure I let my fabulous ushers go because we have no show tonight. Thanks for coming. Tell all your friends. You're welcome.